Welcome back, everybody. We are on to chapter 16. In chapter 15, we learned a few more interesting facts about Wolf. So we learned that his dad was really close to Noah Blackwood, and they were friends, and they were part of this club that hunted big game animals. And they started to look for rare animals instead and started hunting cryptids. And then Noah Blackwood decided he was going to start collecting the cryptids and making money for them before basically killing them for trophies. So all that was very interesting. And we find that the reason why Wolf worked for Noah Blackwood is because he was interested in a girl that he met. But he didn't tell us any more information from that. So let's keep reading. I think we're going to be back in the jungle with Marty and Grace this chapter. Subject, where are you? From Luther to Marty. Remember, Luther's his friend back at the school. Marty, the whole dorm stayed up waiting for your arrival last night. About 2 a.m., the head nose picker pulled up in front of the school, slammed the door to the van, stomped inside, then slammed the door to his living quarters. There was something very important missing from his van, namely the O'Hara twins. What happened? Looks like you're going to miss the annual, that's right, you guessed it, Dairy Day. Stop crying, Luther. Marty answered Luther's email while he waited for the freeze-dried eggs and vegetables to cook. Subject. Regarding where are you? From Marty to Luther. Luther, I don't have time for a long explanation here because Grace and I are about to head off into an unexplored and hideously dangerous jungle. The short of it is that we fell out of Wolf's jet. Stop laughing, I'm serious. As we were trying to catch the chimp in the cargo hold, we got dropped into the Congo along with Wolf's supply canister. Luckily, it has a parachute and we're okay. I mean it, Luther. Stop laughing. It's not funny. I just spent a miserable night with about 6 billion insects drilling for my blood, despite the mosquito netting and the insecticide bath I took before climbing into my hammock. When I reached for my socks this morning, I found them covered with butterflies. I'm not kidding. Have you ever tried to get 100 clinging butterflies off your socks without hurting them? It's not easy. Grace said they were attracted to the odor, but I think she's wrong. She didn't have any butterflies on her socks, and we all know how her feet smell. To top this off, as I was pulling on my socks, I discovered a school of blood-sucking leeches on my legs and a couple other places I don't want to mention in case this email is intercepted by the head NP himself. Grace, on the other hand, seems to have insecticide for blood. Bugs hate her. Go figure. Anyway, we're heading to a place called the Sky House to wait for Wolf and Laurel. They expect to meet us there in about a week or so. I guess they didn't want to take the same shortcut Grace and I took to the Congo. I don't blame them. Wolf says that Phil is looking into a way of getting us out of here sooner, but he's doubtful it will work out. So it doesn't look like we'll be returning to school anytime soon, if at all. In a while, Crocodile. Actually, I saw 6 of the brutes yesterday while I was looking for Grace. They were all puny, around 12 feet long. You should have seen the one that tried to eat me. I'm not kidding. Buona Marty. Marty folded the eggs over, wishing he had some Tabasco and extra sharp cheddar, then touched the last leech with a hot stick from the fire and watched it drop from his ankle and sizzle in the coals. He looked over at Grace lying in her hammock, writing in her moleskin, which was a little soggy from the splashdown and sticky with smashed bananas and pears. Petey was curled up next to her. They looked as if they were resting in someone's backyard instead of a steaming jungle. Marty shook his head in wonder. The girl in the hammock looked like his sister and sounded like his sister, but she sure wasn't acting like his sister. For instance, when he confessed that he knew about the supply drop before they fell, Grace did not get angry. She merely smiled and said it made no difference. She would have ended up in the Goblin universe eventually anyway. When he told her the Sky House was a treehouse, Grace actually laughed and said, "You Tarzan, me Jane." He was beginning to wonder if the bump on the head she got when she slipped off the canister had caused brain damage. "Eggs are ready," he called over to her. Grace barely heard him. "Something very strange is happening to me. Yesterday I stepped over snakes and under bats without the slightest fear. Of course I thought I was having a dream, but still. After the fall, Marty followed my trail and confirmed everything I saw except for my curious gray parrot, who I believe was a figment of my imagination. Wild parrots do not lead people through the jungle. And this morning I still feel good, a little nervous perhaps, but not frightened. I slept through the entire night without waking. No nightmare. No." Marty blew the silent dog whistle loud enough for Grace to hear it. Reluctantly, she closed her moleskin and told him she was coming. "Good," Marty said, "because your eggs are getting cold. But that's not why I blew the whistle." He blew it again and looked up in the trees. Grace then remembered the 4th member of their marooned party. She got out of her hammock, put Petey on the ground, and joined Marty at the smoldering fire. Do you think she heard? Everything within 5 miles heard, Marty answered. He showed Grace the purple square on the gizmo. As you can see, she's not moving, which means she's probably still sleeping. Wolf told me that Bo always sleeps in. Speaking of which, how did you sleep last night? Okay, so remember Bo, the monkey, is still missing from them. So they're trying to make sure that they get Bo before they go back to the treehouse where Wolf's going to pick them up. How did you sleep last night? Good. What about the bugs? There weren't any under my netting. Well, your netting wasn't soundproof. What about the noise? Marty had found the jungle incredibly loud with buzzing insects, calling birds, screaming monkeys, and an assortment of unidentified skitterings, rustlings, and mysterious grunts. He spent the entire night clutching the handle of the machete he had found in the canister. I don't know why, Grace said, but the sounds were somehow soothing. Isn't that strange? Marty felt ants dancing on his neck again, but this time they weren't real. He brushed them off. Oh, but this time they were real. He brushed them off. What I think is strange is that you don't have a single insect bite. I have a couple, Grace said, but you're right. The insects don't seem to bother me as much as they do you. She glanced at Marty's legs and was alarmed to see rivulets of blood running down them. What happened? Leeches, Marty said. No big deal. It will be a huge deal if the wounds ulcerate and turn septic, which is very likely in the tropics. You could die, Marty. Okay, doctor. Wolf had included a well-equipped medical kit in the canister with bandages, scalpels, sutures, painkillers, antibiotics, tranquilizers, sleeping pills, malaria pills, sunscreen, everything a real doctor would need. Marty periodically blew the whistle while Dr. Grace tended his wounds. But there was still no sign of Bo. He checked the gizmo. She's in the same spot. I guess we'll just have to take her harness and put it on her when she decides to join us. Grace finished disinfecting the wounds on his legs. Are there any more? A couple, Marty admitted, but I'll take care of them myself. He disappeared into the brush with the antiseptic. While he tended his private wounds, Grace ate her eggs and thought about their situation. She had talked to Wolf briefly on the gizmo the night before. He told her he didn't know exactly how long it would take Marty and her to reach Lake Tele and the Sky House. It depends on how many swamps you have to go around to get there, he had said. But don't worry, you won't get lost. The gizmo will lead you right to it. And of course, we'll be monitoring your position. If you get confused, I'll get you back on track. Grace didn't think it was possible to become more confused than she already was. When's the last time you were at the Sky House? She had asked. It's been nearly 11 years, Wolf answered quietly. That seems like an awfully long time. Are you sure the house is still there? Yes, well, hang on. Laurel can tell you. At least he's consistent, Grace thought. She was growing accustomed to her uncle's awkward manner. Hi, Grace, Laurel said. Masalito showed me the Sky House just before I left Lake Tele. He's been keeping an eye on it over the years. It's not exactly a luxury hotel suite, but it will do in a pinch. How are you holding up? Grace was happy to see Laurel, even if it was only on a 2-inch screen. I feel... It's difficult to describe, but if we were back in the library, I think I could walk the wire backward with my eyes closed. Goodness, Laurel said. That's a change. I know, Grace said, and it has me a little worried. Don't forget that the wire is thin, Laurel said. You still have to be very careful when you're on it. Grace would have liked to pursue the subject further, but Laurel's image began bouncing violently. Rough road? You've got that right, Laurel said. I'd better shut this down and find something to hang on to. As Grace finished her last bite of eggs and vegetables, Marty emerged from the bushes. He put the first aid kit in the small backpack next to the camp stove and Monkey. Let's check and see where Wolf and Laurel are, Grace suggested. Marty clicked their names. They're about 150 miles from the Ubangi River, and hey, the vidcam's on. The twins' bird-eye view of the Humvee bumping along a muddy road was interrupted by Bo wandering into their makeshift camp wearing Marty's baseball cap. Marty was delighted to see both the chimp and the cap. It looks better on me, he said, snatching it off her head and putting it on his own. Bo picked up Petey, then scooted over to the fire and started rummaging through the ashes for breakfast scraps. If you had come the first time I called, I would have made you your own plate. She doesn't look as if she's starving, Grace observed. Her stomach's as tight as a drum. It did have a satisfied bulge to it. Marty looked through the canister and found the video harness along with some spare gizmo batteries. He stuffed the batteries into a large backpack he had been loading all morning for their trip to the sky house. In it, he had freeze-dried food, energy bars, a water purifier, rope canteens, rain tarps matches, a flashlight, mosquito netting, extra pants, shirts, socks, underwear. Grace had changed into a set of Laurel's spare clothes, which were too big for her. A knife, binoculars, fishing line, hooks, and various other essential items. The pack was getting so heavy, Marty was beginning to wonder if he should have just tied ropes to the canister and dragged it through the jungle to the sky house. He was also wondering how easy it was going to be to get Bo strapped into her harness. Wolf said Bo sometimes was not in the mood for the camera. He looked at Grace's disheveled black hair and remembered something he had seen on a chimpanzee documentary. We need something to distract Bo while I get this thing on. Such as, Grace asked. Your hair, Marty answered. I beg your pardon? If you were to sit down next to her, I bet she'd start grooming your head. Grace wasn't thrilled with the idea. The last time she had gotten within an arm's length of Bo, she had fallen from a jet. I don't think my head needs grooming. Actually, it does, Marty corrected. Have you looked in the mirror lately? Your head looks like a dust mop. Yours doesn't look much better, Grace said indignantly, but she walked over to the foraging chimp. Bo stopped what she was doing and gave Grace the stink eye. Now what? Sit down with your back to her, Marty said. You're kidding. Marty shook his head. She doesn't like me. I've noticed, Marty said, but we have to get the harness on her so Wolf can keep an eye on us. Grace took a deep breath and sat down next to her. If she attacks me, use your machete on her. I promise, Marty assured her. What makes you think that will work? It's kind of a social thing chimps do, Marty said. Like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Yeah, something like that. Actually, they pick lice and ticks out of one another's fur and eat them, which is beneficial to the groomer and the groomee, I suppose. She's not going to find any lice or ticks on me. That's okay. By the look of her belly, she doesn't have room for a tick. Bo put PD down on the ground and peered intently at the back of Grace's head. What's she doing? Just sit still. Marty quietly moved up behind Bo with the harness and sat down. He started to gently groom Bo's neck and back, and after a while, Bo started to groom Grace. Ouch, that hurts, Grace complained. She's pulling hard, intentionally. Don't be such a baby. Marty found a few crawling things dashing through Bo's thick fur, but he wasn't sure if they were lice or not. He waited for the chimp to relax a little, then eased the harness over her shoulders. Bo gave him a sharp look, but she seemed content to dig through Grace's mane and didn't resist. He buckled the straps and turned the tiny camera on, then stood and touched the video icon on the gizmo. A perfect picture of thick black fingers fitting through Grace's hair appeared on the screen. Can I get up now? Sure. Grace got to her feet. Is my scalp bleeding? Marty laughed. Not too badly. He started taking down her hammock, wondering how he was going to get it into the backpack. Grace was having the same problem getting her moleskin into her father's pack. Maybe you should leave it behind, Marty suggested. I noticed that you managed to get your sketchbook and pencils into your pack. Grace wedged her moleskin into the little pack and put her fountain pen into the pocket of Laurel's pants. Marty handed her a hat from the canister. What's this for? Your head, Marty answered. I know the insects seem to be terrified of you, but all it takes is one bite from an infected mosquito and you'll get malaria. He took a piece of netting he had cut out, draped it over his head, and scrunched his baseball cap on top of it. That reminds me. Grace dug the first aid kit back out and found the vial with the malaria pills. She shook one out into Marty's palm. We have to take one a week. After he choked the pill down, Grace followed her brother into the shadowy jungle. All right, interesting. We'll see what happens next time. Bye, guys.